Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger, and I want to give a shout out to M Woods and S Jacques again for coming through in the CashApp, and S Jacques as well for coming through with the links to the news. I'm coming to understand what's a slightly clear picture of what's going on in the black world. The situation of some Colombian soldiers in Sudan is atrocious. Apparently some of them have been recruited for so-called security jobs in the Emirates, and then instead they were dumped off in Sudan to fight against the government. And some of them surrendered actually to the army. And they were like, we didn't try to, this is not what we were trying to do. Now this is a strange situation because you don't normally think about Colombia having a relationship with many nations on the continent, good or bad. But international relations is a field of study in which many black folks need to immerse themselves in and to study. If you're not in STEM, then that's something to study right there. And this is so that we can behave more like a nation with regards to other people, because there's always somebody anywhere you go. It's not everyone, but there's always someone that's willing to single us out for mistreatment, and others are not going to stop them, even if they don't like what they're doing and don't agree with them. They will not be stopped by others. The other thing is that we have to understand that whites will act like different nations amongst themselves because they are, but when they start dealing with other groups of people, they will act like a nation. That's the other thing to understand. They will do this. The UK did this when it came down to war debts. The UK got help from its colonies during World War II. And even though a lot of its colonies were no longer colonies after World War II, the UK did not pay these colonies at that time, but the UK was willing to pay its former colonies. They were white. So South Africa, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, for their effort in siding with the UK during that conflict, they were paid back the war debts owed to them. India, and by extension Pakistan and Bangladesh, never were. No African nation was outside of South Africa. No Caribbean nation was paid these war debts. When it came down to it, they pretty much said, we're not going to have these nations that are mostly us now, majority us, have to be poor because of what we didn't pay them. But these other nations of nothing but little brown and black people are not going to get this money because it's money and it's too precious. And they're just going to have to find a way to make do with what little we leave them, because we didn't colonize them to make them rich anyway. We didn't even colonize them to leave them where they were. We colonized them to impoverish them and become rich that way ourselves. Yeah, I know, right? So with that being said, I see this more and more, and I've thought this way for a while, so it's not new to me, but I realize that many of us who may have never had to really think this way, probably because you've occupied your brains with the study of other subjects, and that's okay. But I realize that this sort of thing is a way for us to understand how we can behave. See, how is it that a race that is diverse and does not have a whole lot in common just by virtue of race alone can function as a common defense block and function as a nation in that regard, cohesively, at least where our safety is concerned? How can that happen? Study of international relations can help, and that does involve following the news. and learning how countries get along with each other that you don't think would have much of a relationship. Knowing how embassies work, how consulates work in relation to embassies. Knowing what languages are oftentimes used to translate in between these countries, because trust you me, most Sudanese don't speak Spanish and most Colombians don't speak Arabic. So how is it that you got this stuff going on? Well, for the most part, a lot of these negotiations will be conducted in English. That also brings about another opportunity to mind, and that is the opportunity to learn. The opportunity to teach English if you get trained in teaching it. Now, Flight Madness talks about this, and I think it's a good profession. I don't want to call it just a hustle. No, it's a real job. And it's a good profession. But you do have to learn to teach it, because everyone that speaks English is not automatically qualified to explain it to other people, to explain it to students. And I'll be one of the first to tell you that there are some bad teachers out there. There are also bad students, and that's a different topic for another day, but they do exist. These bad students, man, they always say, teacher, no good. They always say that. Some of my students want to do that right now. I got students right now, 23 of them, right? Guess how many have passed? We had to turn in grades today. Guess how many passed? 2. You know, when they do the evaluations on me, they gonna tear my name up. You know that. But that ain't my fault. I can honestly say, hey, look, I explained it. But imagine if there were more of us and we were saying, listen, there are plenty of us and we will teach, but we're going to teach this way. If there were more of us and we were willing to say, wait a minute, that's not how you explain English. And we're not doing it your way, because that don't work. What has to happen? Well, then what has to happen is that they have to allow us to teach English in a way that's actually going to work. That's what has to happen. Hey, we know how to teach English. Not only do we know how to speak it, we know how to explain it. We also know when to not let a student go on to the next level. We're going to have to start actually thinking more internationally before we start thinking about just going somewhere. This is important. We need to learn how nations relate to each other. And in this way, we can start to function even more efficiently than white Westerners, including white Americans. This is important. It is a potential we have, and we have not ruined it yet. But I want to make sure we don't waste it. One of the things that's going to help us is the understanding of a new type of identification that we need to take with us. And I don't mean an identification like just the passport per se. But I mean something, the official passport on which you travel. But what I'm referring to is, I'm referring also to the souvenir passports, the BMPT passports. The BMTPs, Black Male Traveler passports. The souvenir passports I mentioned earlier, that if somebody were able to make, then we could simply show to each other. It could even be a card that we carry just to show that we are BMPTs, Black Male Passport Travelers. And it could be an endorsement. One shows that you're a passport bro, the other shows that you're SYSBM. And in this way, when you see each other in airports, because we will come across each other. And in this way, when you see each other in airports, you will be able to say, hey, I recognize your shirt. Your passport, bro? Yeah, you SYSBM. Yes, sir, Sholam is. Because you know how we greet each other when we see each other. And that's important. And that's I mean, I just happened to bump into a man that has met Austin Holloman. We bumped into each other at the Doha airport. We happened to be standing in line next to each other. He got a YouTube channel. He lives in Bangkok, has a business there. Young brothers doing things. They starting their own digital currencies. I believe his name is Chris Parrish. You can look, check his channel out, contact him, and ask him about them currencies. Yeah, I know, right? Speaking of which, I accept XRP now. So in any case, let me tell you guys, man, on the real, the more we learn about how these nations relate to each other, the more we can teach each other, the more we can function. At least when it comes to a common defense, the more we can function as a nation. As far as other people are concerned, because you see, I know somebody from Zimbabwe is not the same at all as somebody from Senegal. I get that. Except by race. And even then, the DNA will probably tell you that one is from this region of Africa and the other one's from that region of Africa. The languages will certainly be vastly different. And that's okay. You expect that. But I want you all to know that if we behave as such and we do have a common defense, then believe you me, somebody would be a little bit nervous about mistreating a Zimbabwean in front of a Senegalese. Somebody would be afraid to mistreat a Wolof from Senegal or Gambia if there's a Dinka from South Sudan standing nearby. Somebody might be afraid to mistreat a Mozambican even if a Mauritanian is standing nearby and they're not near each other. So keep that in mind, Joe. There's a lot for us to learn, and if it's not STEM, then at least look into other things that are useful for us. Right now, there's a push for people to move around internationally and to cooperate internationally. And this is a good time for us to look for ways to capitalize on that for our benefit. There are many things to study that can serve that purpose. Hopefully, you'll be able to find what you think will work best for you. I hope that what I've said has been a benefit. And shouts out again to S Jacques and M Woods. Thank you for listening, and as always, black heart, black mind, black out, assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual non-select male power, just because they don't like in a black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day. Thank you for flying with us again here on Jet Black Air, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off.